Hi there. A lot of people asked me to quickly remark on the big announcement that came out today that HBO Max and Discovery Plus are going to merge into one big streaming platform, and this has resulted in a wave of cancellations and potential layoffs. Well, the first thing is this didn't come as a surprise to us. My channel and people following industry news, we've been anticipating this for over a year. In fact, we're starting to kind of worry that it wasn't happening quickly enough, that it was going too slowly, because it held up a lot of things, such as international expansion for HBO Max was put on hold because they said we're waiting for the merger. So I've talked about this before, if you weren't keeping up with this, that this was all, we knew this was coming. The reason this is happening is because we are now firmly into round 2 of the streaming wars, or streaming wars 2 if you count them as two separate things. Round 1 was 2019 to 2020, when everyone was scrambling to make their own streaming platform to compete with Netflix. Netflix kicked the ass of all the old media companies from 2011 through around 2016, which is why you had all those mega mergers like Disney buying Fox. They were shoring up their resources to make their own streaming platforms to compete with Netflix. So round 1 started when Disney Plus launched late 2019. Remember, every couple of months there was another giant streaming service launching, like HBO Max, like Apple TV Plus, and the also-rans like Peacock. You don't see that happening anymore, that everyone has a streaming platform. There's 7 big ones, 8 if you count Discovery Plus. That the big ones that resulted from all of this, when the dust settled by 2021, were Netflix, Amazon Prime, Disney Plus, HBO Max is kind of in the middle, but they were gaining. And then the also-rans like Paramount Plus, used to be CBS All Access, now it's Paramount Plus, Peacock, and Apple TV Plus, which it does well for its size, but it's more of a side hustle that Apple does. And the problem is, there was this big expansion wave. There should have been more competition years before this, but there was a global pandemic, which pretty much coincided with the launch of all these things. And because everyone was in lockdown, TV viewership was artificially inflated. Netflix did not understand this, and despite the warnings of all the experts, they were just going, Ted Sarandos going, wow, viewership is higher than ever. The good times will never end. There's going to be infinite growth. And they were just throwing money at problems. Like, they fired Cindy Holland, who was the head of their original programming since they began, because she was telling him, no, you're spending too much, and greenlighting more than even I'm comfortable with. And then this happened. You saw the bust cycle that Netflix went in with the first subscriber losses it's ever had earlier this spring. Well, everyone kept trying to tell them that as soon as the pandemic winds down and the TV viewership bubble, goes back to normal, you're not living in the near monopoly you had in 2017. When that bubble ends, you're going to come down to normal levels, but you're competing with Disney Plus, you're competing with Amazon and HBO Max. And it's a zero-sum game now, it's not infinite growth. So, streaming wars round 2, it's not expansion, it's contraction and mergers. Netflix learned this the hard way, and they've been slashing a lot of their projects. They've gutted their animation department. Second big merger thing was that Discovery Plus bought HBO Max and said, we're probably going to make a combined platform in a year or a couple of months. We knew this was coming. We knew that they had the 4th largest one merged with the 8th largest one. And below Discovery Plus, there's just like smaller little things that aren't really big streamers of note. The third thing we can pretty much predict in streaming wars round 2 is that someone's going to buy Paramount Plus. Obviously, Netflix and HBO Max don't have the money to do that, and Disney and Amazon don't seem interested in that. So the odds-on favorite is that Peacock is going to buy Paramount Plus to make one big combined platform. And you might be surprised at that, but they made that huge Halo show. Well, yeah, they slapped it together to... It's like when you wash your car before you sell it. They're trying to make their platform look just good enough that it's worth paying them more money to buy it. But they're not seriously setting up Paramount Plus as a rival to the other ones. And I talked about all this in another video, that if you look at what they're doing, Other things CBS Viacom owns, like Showtime Plus or BET Plus, or there was another cartoon thing they own, if they were trying to build up Paramount Plus, they would have merged all that content together. Like Yellow Jackets is on Showtime Plus, not Paramount, even though they have the same parent company. And I've seen industry articles saying this. The only reason they wouldn't have merged them is because they want to sell all of these eventually. And it's easier to negotiate the sale of each individually. So a separate pricing for Showtime Plus, for BET Plus, rather than Paramount Plus. This is the hallmarks of what you do right before you're selling your assets. So Paramount Plus won't be here 2 or 3 years from now. I mean, the content will be Star Trek as a franchise, Halo as a franchise. It's probably going to get bought up by Peacock. And if you think, well, Peacock doesn't have that much programming now, yeah, they're in the middle of a development cycle, and 2 or 3 years from now, they got a lot of stuff in the pipeline. They have a good cash flow from Comcast, whereas Discovery merging with HBO Max, they're deeply in the red and need money. That in terms of who is in a position to expand or merge or acquire other people, you're looking at Peacock, even though they're the smallest one now, really. So just looking at the big picture of corporate mergers, this is Streaming Wars Round 2 consolidation. We knew this was coming. It's the smart thing to do. To survive, HBO Max needs to merge with Discovery Plus. We were hoping for this. It gives them more money to do more stuff in the long term. Problem is there were a lot of redundancies at HBO Max because, again, it's Time Warner. They had multiple departments for things. There needs to be streamlining. I mean, you've seen, and also sometimes they were just throwing money at problems, that the CNN Plus debacle this spring, that the old head of HBO Max wasn't doing as much market research as he should have. So they launched this streaming app for CNN separate from HBO Max for some reason. And they said, now all their content will be with that, but they said, it's CNN Plus. We spent $100 million on it, and we hope to have 2 million subscribers by the end of 2022. And they shut it down in 30 days because it never had more than 10,000 subscribers. Someone should have told them that the CNN cable channel only has about 700,000 subscribers on a daily basis, 700,000 viewers on a daily basis, and you thought this was going to turn into 2 million subscribers. The numbers just aren't there. This is fantasy. And they blew $100 million on it because they just plain didn't think it through. The head of Discovery is now head of the combined thing, David Zaslav. He wants to put an end to that because he wants to run this competently as a business. Unfortunately, that means that, as with any merger, and this is a vital and necessary merger, point 2 now, yes, some projects are going to be canceled. Probably not big popular projects that you can easily name, like House of the Dragon or Euphoria, or they promised Peacemaker is fine. The DC Comics TV shows, those are fine. For James Gunn personally said that, but the Batgirl movie had its own problems because of the pandemic. The budget had mushroomed from 70 million to 90 million. I read a whole article on this saying that at a certain point, the tax write-off that you get from not releasing it will, if not make more money, you'll lose less by not releasing it, and you write it off as a tax thing, than the meager profits you would get releasing it. That they've estimated this isn't the next Robert Pattinson Batman scale thing. It won't have that big of a profit relative to the ballooning costs. And just pure math, the accountants looking at it said, it would be better for us to just write this off as a tax loss. And I regret that, but these things happen with certain projects. I'm not too worried about other stuff. They said they might shut down HBO Max originals, but Raised by Wolves was always going to get canceled. It was too high concept to have, it's not like people on the street were talking about it. It was just for the hardcore sci-fi fringe, but we know it needs to have wide appeal. But like Euphoria is an HBO show, not an HBO Max original. It's fine. Succession, House of the Dragon, these will not be too badly affected. But I hope that for the sake of the fans, they cut together what they have and release it someday. But I'm worried about the health of a franchise. of the platform as a whole, and canceling the Batgirl movie now might put them in the financial position they need to be in on a scale of not 1 year from now with Batgirl, but if thinking on a scale of 3 to 5 years, you need to think ahead of how do we get to the point where we can, have the funds and stability to make a streaming Snyderverse, or just the Robert Pattinson TV tie-ins like the Penguin thing they wanted, that in order to save 3 other projects or the big projects we're really worried about, you might have to cut the one that's the most expensive. And so I don't think it was, they're flippant, they hate the fans, they canceled Batgirl, as they said this isn't going to make a lot of money and the costs are mushrooming on it. And the tax dodge might work better. So, there's a lot of mergers going on now. Just today I saw, for anime streaming, for example, Sony bought Crunchyroll, then they bought Funimation from HBO Max, and just today they bought Right Stuff, which is a distributor, so like Crunchyroll's now like a near monopoly when it comes to anime streaming. That's like a microcosm version of the larger streaming you're seeing with major things like Netflix, HBO Max, Paramount Plus. But yeah, we are at this stage. We fully anticipated this would happen. I've been talking about it for months on my channel. And there's going to be some shakiness, but in terms of the 5-year scale strength of this as a platform, this is a necessary step of restructuring. So a lot of people are going to be yelling about this. I'm not trying to diminish your concerns. It's just, this is a bigger issue. I wanted to keep this short. Well, I had 3 big points. The first one was we were anticipating this already. The second one was because of the streaming wars, you need to have a merger, you need to have streamlining and refinement. This isn't unusual, and I'm not worried about it. Third point is, how does this affect the international spread of HBO Max, or now the new combined platform? Short answer is, places that we thought they would be spreading this year have been pushed back by 2 years. But most of the major markets have third-party distributors who renewed their contracts through 2025 anyway. So they would not have gotten HBO Max. This doesn't affect that. That Sky Atlantic, that's the big one that covers the British Isles, Germany, Italy. They renewed their contract through 2025 anyway. This doesn't affect them. Or Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, and the Middle East distributor OSN, those weren't affected by this anyway. They were already pushed back till 2025. What intrigued me is they put out a timeline of the new rollout of the combined platform for the world in 2023, and for the purposes of my channel covering House of the Dragon, that's an off year anyway. They said they haven't started filming yet, so it wouldn't come out until 2024. They said, expect the merged platform by summer of 2023 in the United States, and then by fall in Latin America. Now, the interesting point is they include numbers of countries in this, and for Latin America, it's 39, which is the specific number of countries and territories that they're already serving HBO Max in. So, okay, without exception, everything that already has HBO Max in Latin America will be upgraded to this by next fall, a full year from now. But then you look at the other numbers for Europe and Asia Pacific, and they're not expanding to other places. Just when you realize this is country count. Well, in Europe, they spread first to where HBO had direct markets. I've covered this in other videos. So HBO Nordic was a direct market, had 4 countries in it. Iberia has Spain, Portugal, and Andorra. They count Andorra as when they make lists of, and we have 16 countries this year. That's in there. So that brings us up to 7. 13 more to go, which is the number in HBO Eastern Europe, from Poland to the Balkans. That count doesn't include the Netherlands, which is a big market. They just expanded HBO Max into this past March. That was probably the biggest country they expanded to in the big March wave, along with Eastern Europe. But whereas Eastern Europe had been a direct market, up until then, Netherlands was using this third party called Ziggo. So that was an expansion into a new market. And it's not included in the count here. Otherwise, this would be 21 countries. Then you get Asia Pacific, which is only 7. Now, there was an HBO direct market in Southeast Asia, based in Singapore, and there are 8 countries in it, not 7. You got Singapore, Hong Kong, Taiwan, Philippines, Thailand, Indonesia, Malaysia, Vietnam. I would guess they're leaving out Vietnam because it's a smaller market. It's usually the last one on the list. Like when Disney Plus spread to Southeast Asia, it took them a while to get to Vietnam, but I'm guessing that they lost one in there. It's probably Vietnam. So based on the chart here, they seem to be expanding just to that Southeast Asia region by mid-2024. And we're not sure when House of the Dragon Season 2 is coming out. It might be spring, maybe as late as July of 2024. It is possible that if House of the Dragon Season 2 takes a long time in development because of all the CGI, Southeast Asia might get it, like the Philippines, might get it just in time, timed for the big release of that, but we'll have to see. And then it just mysteriously says, new markets, 4 countries, by fall of 2024. What could those be? Well, we already knew they were gearing up for major launches in a couple of countries, that they were buying up, when they buy up content packages in advance, you can tell they're about to spread there. They are gearing up for a huge launch in India. That'll be the size of Western Europe by subscriber count. They were preparing for a big launch in South Korea, also a new direct market, and France, which was going to be pretty soon. France is their third-party distributor, OCS. Their old contract was going to run out this coming January. We thought France would get HBO Max by January 1st of 2023. Now, based on that count, it's probably counted as one of the new markets by fall of 24. And that's 3 things: India, South Korea, France. The 4th one, I would guess, is the Netherlands, because it's not included by the numbers. The numbers don't add up for 20 countries in Europe. That's probably the 4th, quote-unquote, new market. And like I said, for all the third parties, Sky Atlantic, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Japan, Middle East, probably Africa, those things have all been renewed through 2025 anyway, the third parties, so they wouldn't be expanding HBO Max there anyway. So if you're listening to me from, Britain or Germany, this doesn't really affect you. But countries in my top 10, South Korea isn't even in my top 40, but in my top 10 countries like India, if you're listening to me from India or from the Netherlands or from the Philippines, who are top 10 countries in my channel viewership, this does affect you, that we thought you would get this by this summer or at least the end of this year. It's been pushed back 2 years to late 2024 in some cases. Then again, that is the question of, okay, this is when the merged service is launching, but now that you've figured that out, are you going to halt all HBO Max expansion, just HBO Max, not the combined with Discovery Plus version? Are you going to resume that in some places over the next 2 years, or are all of your efforts focused on upgrading the US service, then the Latin America service? Like, I don't know, would they have the spare resources on the local level to expand into Greece as they had said they intended on a matter of months? Just a few months ago, they said by summer we'll be in Greece. If they make an announcement, I will report on it. But up until then, we should assume they won't. So, as soon as that happens, I do try to report on this as much as I report on, the Westeros news. I try to report on the out-of-universe. How is HBO and HBO Max doing as a platform industry-wise? I report on that pretty regularly when things come up, so please like and subscribe if you'd like to keep track of how things are changing with this. And while it is a regrettable 2-year delay, I am thinking in terms of the next 5 to 10 years. And HBO Max started very far behind Disney Plus, very much less Netflix. And in order to build themselves up to the point where they were considered the comeback, HBO Max was laughable 2 years ago, and they've been doing reasonably well. They need to pull themselves up by their bootstraps to compete like that, and this is a necessary restructuring to compete with. There's only going to be about 4 major streamers at the end of Streaming Wars 2. So, please stick around for more updates as I get them.